Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to today's Daf Hayami Maseches CHULLIN Daf Lamed Aleph. We begin 7 lines from the top of the Amid at the 2 dots. The Mishnah warns against snapping downward and slicing down. It has to be an across, an horizontal sort of cutting motion. Otherwise, you're running into derasa issues, which is a disqualifying element in shechita. Now, suppose instead of going, forth and back, a two-way cut, he did just a single directional cut. He went just to or fro. Mishnah says sometimes it can work, provided the knife is long enough to affect a proper cut, to accommodate a proper cut despite the shortness of the motion. And the Mishnah says it works if the sakin is long enough, meloit savar, size of the neck. So says the Mishnah. Again, the Mishnah is speaking that he did a shechita with just a single swoop, a single motion. And if the sakin is meloit savar, it's kosher. What does that mean, meloit savar? So the neck, let's say, is 4 inches wide. Amar Rabbi Zeira, meloit savar v'chutz l'tzavar. The neck needs to be meloit savar, size of the neck, v'chutz l'tzavar, plus a bit more to go beyond the neck, and that will accommodate a proper cut. The question was like this: what did he mean? 4 inches plus a drop, or does he mean 4 inches plus 4 inches? So it's twice the length of the neck, a total of 8 inches. Iboilu. When Rabbi Zeira mentioned chutz l'tzavar, he meant meloit savar v'chutz l'tzavar k'meloit savar. Number 1, meloit savar. It has to be 4 inches long. Number 2, beyond the neck, v'chutz l'tzavar, another 4 inches, which is a neck width, k'meloit savar, the havaluhu, which gives you a total of 8 inches. T'rei tzavari, the length of 2 necks. And that sort of compensates for the lack of back and forth motion. Gives you enough length, enough knife material to cut properly, despite it being a single directional cut. Or you can say, you don't need that much. Meloit savar, it needs to be the size of the neck. V'chutz l'tzavar mashon, just to drop a tad, a bit more than the neck. And that's enough to do the job. Tashma, comes a raya from the next part of the Mishnah, which speaks about a similar case. But instead of just a single animal, he lined up 2 side by side. Tashma hayashechet v'hitis shnei roshin vas achas. So he did the shechita on both heads, vas achas, as one in one swoop, in a single directional motion. So he didn't go back and forth, just a single cut one way. Once again, it all depends on the length of the knife, and if it has the ability to accommodate a proper cutting motion. Mishnah says, if the sakin is long enough, meloit savar echad, as long as one neck, which is 4 inches, then it's kosher. Now, what does that mean? Just 4 inches? So, in this case where it's 2 animals side by side, you mean you need less length than the previous halacha, which was just a single neck? How does that work? My meloit savar echad. What does the Mishnah mean when it says the length of a neck? Elam doesn't mean meloit savar echad v'suloi, just the length of a neck and no more. And we're talking again about 2 animals side by side being shechted simultaneously. How could that work? Look, even by a single animal, we need more than that. Certainly by 2 animals, which is a much longer, substantial cut. Look, even by a single animal that's being shechted in a single directional motion. You just told me the knife has to be 4 inches plus a bit more. You're going to tell me that now that he's cutting 2 animals, it's enough to have an even shorter knife, the length of just one neck? Oh, ela pshita. Apparently, when the Mishnah speaks about meloit savar, it's referring to the additional length, beyond the base length, beyond the neck width. It means like this. Aside from the knife being 4 inches plus 4 inches to accommodate both necks, you need an additional plus 4 inches more. Shmamina, that teaches us that when Mishnah refers to the phrase Maloit Savar, that's the additional length besides the base length. Chutz l'tzavar, beyond the neck, Shmamina. So hence, when he's cutting a single animal in one shot, in one motion, it needs to be Maloit Savar beyond the base. So the base is 4 inches, 4 more inches to accommodate a proper cut. When it's 2 animals side by side, you need 4 inches plus 4 inches, plus beyond, we need another 4 inches. So we give them a discount. You don't have to have 4 times 4, 3 times 4 is enough. That's enough to accommodate a proper cut. But when do we have these length, requirements? That's only when he's coming across but not back, or back and not forth. It's a single cut. However, if he chooses to go back and forth and just cut and cut, back and forth, length of knife is not a factor. In fact, the Mishnah says, afilu kolshu, afilu be'izmel ksher, even if it's a very short knife, even just a izmel, like a scalpel, like a little razor, it's okay. Because he's just going to go back and forth until he cuts properly, without resorting to pressing down and pressuring the neck. Amar Menashe. Let me explain to you what the Mishnah meant when it said you can use an izmel. Be'izmel, provided that this izmel does not have any pointy, like these little horns, she'en le karnaim, which sometimes they would do for ornamental purposes. Because if it does, then you're running into the issue that perhaps the izmel will slip and the pointy edges will poke into the animal, make it a treifa. What would you say about using a needle, but back and forth until it's cut? Machtamai, Amrle says no, that's going too far. Machtam mivza baza, a needle tends to poke. It's never going to do a proper cut, even if it's taken back and forth. It's just going to rip. Next question. Machta de ushkefi mai. Ushkefi are the leather workers. So what about their sort of needle? It's a thicker needle has a little more body to it. It's wider, has a little bit of a length to it. So perhaps that's better. And that can be used to do shchita, provided again he goes back and forth until he cuts through. Amrli says, yeah, Tanina. It would seem from our Mishnah that it's acceptable. Mishnah says, afilu kolshu, right? If he's going to be doing back and forth, even if it's kolshu, and then it says even an izmel. So izmel, we know is an izmel. What was the Mishnah referring to with the term kolshu? Ma'alav, we're assuming that the word kolshu, lasui, is coming to cover this very tool, machta the ushkefi, to allow it. Lai, no, who says? Maybe it's an izmel. Again, back to that razor, that scalpel. But the machta the ushkefi perhaps is not acceptable. A scalpel, that's already mentioned in the next item in the Mishnah. Izmel, well, that's behedik tanila. Mishnah already explained that a second later. No, people should come mefarish. Perhaps the Mishnah is just elaborating, explaining itself. My kolshu, when I said kolshu, I mean the izmel. But perhaps the other item is not acceptable. I'll even prove to you that the Mishnah has this in mind. It's all about the izmel, but not the other item. Because if you're going to tell me that in fact machta de ushkefi is what the Mishnah meant, so once we know that's acceptable, despite its problematic configuration, hashta, machta de ushkefi kshari, if you're allowing this type of tool, despite its misgivings, izmel beboye, of course, izmel would be okay. Izmel is even better than the machta de ushkefi that has those, those problematic, which has those shortcomings, right? So if the machtal ushkafi is shari, of course, ismol, it goes without saying, why would I even have to mention the ismol? So the fact that the Mishnah did mention the ismol indicates to us that we're just talking about the ismol, not about the other item. No, who says? Perhaps item number 1 is machtal ushkafi. Then comes the ismol. Now, as to your question, why even mention the ismol once you mentioned the first time? Well, you know what? Ismol is also pretty tricky. And it needs to be stated that it's okay, because ismol, it's trichle. The Mishnah did have to elaborate and specify to allow the ismol. Why not? Why would I think it's a problem? Remember, a minute ago we spoke about this ismol that has these protruding sharp edges. Perhaps I would say, ligzer, I shouldn't allow even a regular ismol she'ein lo karnaim, which doesn't have those problematic horns. Don't allow it. Because it might lead you to use the problematic one, which is unacceptable. Ismol she'esh lo karnaim. One comes to the Mishnah and says, we know you'll be careful. So again, perhaps the Mishnah is merely referring to the ismol and not the machtal ushkafi, so we don't really have a resolution on that question. Okay, in conclusion, if one chooses to do a shechita with a single directional motion, then he must ensure the knife is long enough to accommodate a proper shechita and to avoid drasa, pressing down. However, if he chooses to go back and forth, then pretty much any instrument is okay if it will affect a proper cutting motion, as opposed to the needle, which is a pricker. The machtal ushkafi we left unresolved. Continues the Mishnah. What about intent? How critical is the element of intention, of kavanah, in terms of the act of shechita? So we know that shechita has to be executed by a person. It has to be koyach gavra, like by nitilas yadayim, right? You have to be. It has to be human made, human done, an act of a person. But how involved must that person be? Is it enough that it's his physical expression, or does he have to have that mindfulness as well, the kavanah as well? We all know that by korbanos. We learned this back at the end of Menachos, right? It has to be with kavanah, with cognizance. I am doing a shechita on a korban. But by CHULLIN, it's not so simple. Let's see the Mishnah. Nafla sakad mashachta. There was a knife sitting on the table, and it dropped off the table on its own. A wind came and blew it. Even if the knife accomplished a proper shechita, a kosher shechita, you check the animal is properly shechted. Psula, unacceptable, because it was not done by a person. Shanamar, the pasuk says, "V'zavachta," what you slaughter, "V'ochalta," you'll eat. Masha'ata zavech, what you shech, ata oichel, you will eat. It has to be a man-made shechita. Now, Talmud Bavli says the Gemara. Apparently, the issue is because the knife just dropped down on its own, without human involvement. However, but he pilahu, suppose he flicked it off the table, without realizing that there's an animal that is going to do shechita. So there was physical human involvement, but not mental human involvement. Proper shechita, even though he had no intention to do shechita. That's enough. Maas is enough without kavanah. Who's speaking in this Mishnah? Man Tana. Who's the one that holds that kavanah, intent, cognizant, is not a requirement when it comes to shechita of CHULLIN, of regular animals? Amarava, Rabbi Nasani. In fact, it's Rabbi Nasani. The Tani Aisha Zeira, that was his name, the young Aisha, Dimin Chavraya, one of the colleagues, one of the members of the yeshiva, he presented a halacha, which relates to this type of scenario. It's a mass of a person without kavanah. Zorak sakan l'matza b'koisel. He's holding a knife and he's doing, target practice against the wall. So he threw the knife against the wall, and lo and behold, it encountered an animal, and he did shechita. And it did a proper shechita. So it was man-made, but without intent. Rabbi Nassan Machshir, he said it's acceptable. V'chachamim paislim, kont chachamim, no, you need kavanah. Hu tanila. So the one who presented this brisa, this halacha, he presented the brisa and he concluded that in fact, the halacha, the accepted practice is in fact Rabbi Nassan. All you need is the act, the masa of the person without the kavan. Now, Rava was the one who pointed out that our Mishnah infers Rabbi Nassan's opinion. Ask the Gemara, Va'amra Rava Chadazimna. I mean, so you tell me that there is a stam Mishnah, an anonymous Mishnah, in line with Rabbi Nassan, which indicates that that's how we paskin, right? The thing is, Rava already pointed this out in the past. In that first Mishnah, back in the beginning of the Masechta, that there is a stam Mishnah, which infers like Rabbi Nassan, right? So why this redundancy? Va'amra Rava Chadazimna. Rava himself already pointed out this inference back in the first Mishnah. The Snania, the Mishnah, right, by the unqualified sheikhtim, the cheirish, the shoita, the katan, the minor, they don't have a fully developed mind. So they're not to be trusted, but it's not, the Mishnah says, if there is supervision, it's okay. To all those individuals who did shechita, v'acherim roin oisan, under supervision of an adult, shechitasin is kshera. And the question was asked, fine, it was executed by a person, but there was no proper kavana, right? The katan, the cheirish, their mindfulness is not really fully developed. They don't have the ability to have kavana. The question was posed, so why is it acceptable? Who's the one that supports this concept that shechita does not require kavana? Once again, Rava tells us the Mishnah is reflective of Shitas Rabbi Nassan. Rabbi Nassan. So the question is, why does Rava have to point this out twice? That the Mishnah there, like the Mishnah here, is in line with Rabbi Nassan. It's a stam Mishnah, that's how we pass. Tzricha, there's a point that's being brought out in each one, unlike the other. Tzricha, di Yashmin Hassam. Had Rava only mentioned this point back in the Mishnah on Daf Beis, I would say, yeah, there Rabbi Nassan allows it. Mishum after all, the child is intending on cutting. He doesn't have proper kavanah for the act of shechita. That's beyond his capacity, but he's cognizant of the fact that he's cutting. So perhaps that's a notch up, and that works. But in our case, we simply flick the knife off the table without any plan of doing shechita. He's not even trying to cut anything. Perhaps that's even worse. And even Rabbi Nassan would not accept that. On the other hand, had Rabbi only pointed out in our Mishnah that it works, I would say, yeah, here, because after all, it was a bendas, a fully mature adult with a developed mind. So perhaps in this case, since he was the one involved, it counts as shechita. Aval Hassam, as opposed to that first Mishnah where it's a minor, it's a deranged person, it's not happening by a bendas, through a mindful person, through a mature person, Emelei perhaps. Even Rabbi Nassan would not accept it as a proper shechita tzricha, hence both inferences, both diyukim, in either case, Rabbi Nassan would accept it as a proper shechita, because after all, as long as it was a masa of a person, it works even without das. Okay, so at the end of the day, we have a machlekes between Rabbi Nassan and the Rabbanan. What extent of human involvement is required for shechita of CHULLIN? Again, for shechita of kachim, of course, we need a higher level of kavanah according to all shitas. We need his act, we need his intent, we need his kavanah. But by shechita of CHULLIN, of regular animals, Rabbi Nassan says, masa of a person is enough. Without kavanah, chacham require kavanah as well. Now we shift to a similar topic, which will have some parallels to the shechita discussion, but we're speaking about being toivel in a mikveh. Itma, we have a discussion. And the question will be, likewise, how much is needed? Intent, kavana, right? So we have a nida shenenza, a nida that was a woman that was impure, and she was sort of forced to be tevel. She was thrown into the water, v'tavla. Okay, she immersed, but it was without intent, without cognizance, without kavanah. So what happens? What's her status? There was an immersion, so in terms of the, physical phenomena, yeah, there was an immersion in the water, but the mind wasn't there. Amar Avidam Rav, so Rav says, it works. Tahir l'beisa. She's tahir for her husband, so it's not chula, it's not kachim, it's not truma. For that, she's completely tahir. And her husband interacts with her, there's no kares, as it would be if she would be tummy, so that's off the table. But if she's a kayan, she can't eat truma. Because in order to purify herself with respect to truma purposes, the mind has to be involved. You almost have to purify your mind as well. Physically immersing it in water is not sufficient to accomplish purity regarding teruma. So truma needs a higher level. That's a given. But regarding chulin, mundane matters like her husband, for that Rab says a tefillah without kavanah is enough. For Rabbi Yechon Amar, he disagrees. No. You want to accomplish tefillah, it has to be a comprehensive experience, mind and body. Even with respect to her husband, she's not considered tahar. A tefillah is only with kavanah, which in this case didn't happen. Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. So Rav asked Rav Nachman, le Rav, according to Rav, who says a tefillah without kavanah works regarding truma, right? The Amar tahar leveisa. Regarding the husband, she's tahar. There's no kares anymore. But regarding truma, which would potentially involve isser of misa b'dei shamayim, if one needs truma, one needs tamei, there's misa b'dei shamayim, misa by heaven, which in a way is less severe than kares. Rashi explains kares affects a person's children. So how could you explain that? With respect to husband, which is a kares issue, she's okay. Tahar l'beisa. With respect to truma, which is a less severe issue, for that it's not sufficient. Vasur lecha b'truma. How could you explain that? Avoin kares hutra. The kares issue was cleared. Isur misa meboy. If that cleared, doesn't it go without saying that misa issues, which are less severe, certainly would have been accommodated? Amalei says no. Look, it's not about severity. There are different tracks. This requires one thing, this requires something else. Amalei says, Bala chulinu. With respect to her husband is chulin. It's not truma, it's not kachim. V'chulin lo yebai kavana. For matters of chulin, kavana is not a requirement. As opposed to truma, where it is. No, uminat taimra. How do we know that regarding chulin, kavana is not a requirement? So, just simply immersing physically is okay even without mindfulness. It's not. We have a Mishnah, gal shenitlash. So this huge wave came flying off the sea, containing the right amount of water, 40 sa, which is the required amount of water for tefillah. And the fellow standing there, and landed on a person who was tamei. Or utensils that were tamei tahirin. They have now achieved tahara. It's like they immersed in a mikveh. Now, was there kavanah? We'll assume there wasn't. Why? Because the Mishnah is sort of drawing a parallel case. Adam and Kalim. My level will assume one is similar to the other. Adam Dumi the Kalim. The case of the person being hit by the water is similar to the case of the Kalim, which has no kavanah. Ma Kalim lemechavni. Certainly the Kalim have no kavanah. Rashi says they have no das, right? They're not thinking about becoming tar. Adam nami lebe kavanah. Likewise, the case of the person being hit by the water is a case of a fellow who wasn't really planning, he wasn't really intending. Apparently, you don't need kavanah to become tar. Who says? Who says? Maybe he was planning, he was anticipating. Trying to save $1 on the mikvah, so he stood near the sea waiting for a big wave to wash him over. Perhaps we'll speak that he's sitting and waiting, expecting it to happen. There was kavanah. When will this wave detach and come upon me? Return to my base. And likewise by the Kalim, even though they themselves have no intelligence, but perhaps somebody was taking care of them, looking after them. arranged for this water to hit him. The kelim do the adam, and the kelim is similar to the case of the adam with kavanah. Ma adam do beina kavanah, just like by the person. The bar kavanah was a man of intelligence. Av kelim nami, likewise by the kelim to come kavan lu adam. There was somebody there arranging for it to happen. So his intent, his kavanah, by extension, applies to the kelim too. So who says we're talking without kavanah? What's your right? Perhaps you'll respond. You'll say, well, why would the Mishnah speak about such an obvious case? If there's kavanah, then it's obvious that it works. If he's sitting and waiting, remember, why even discuss that? Well, it's not so simple. Perhaps you can say that it's not so clear-cut. Ligzar, we shouldn't allow this to happen. Next time you might utilize like a running stream off the mountain, which is not suitable for tefillah because it's in motion, right? A mikveh has to be stationary, set in the place, right? As opposed to just water flying off the mountain. So perhaps we shouldn't allow him to utilize this wave, even though it's going to come land on him, which makes it stationary and makes it fit for tefillah. But people are not so, aware, and they're not so clear, and if we allow this, he's going to go and use the other thing. So perhaps we shouldn't allow this system. Inami, another concern would be ligzar parshanut-torah-comment. We shouldn't allow him to use the wave, because now he knows that the Russian, it's the head, meaning when it lands down on him, he's tar because the water has now landed. But perhaps next time, torah-comment, he might go ahead and use the kippin, the dome part, while it's still suspended in the air, before it landed on him, which is not suitable for tefillah, because you can't use water flying in the air. Kamash malon b'legazrina comes to the mission and says, you know what? We assume he's educated enough, he knows what he's doing, he'll research the matter, and he'll only use it in the proper way. Now, once on this topic, the Gemara asks a side point. In Manah Tamer, who's to say even the lemat bilinam the kippin, he can't use the dome part of the water, of the wave, that's not. We have a Mishnah, mat bilan b'rashin, you could be tayvel on the Reish, on the part which lands on the floor, ve'ein matbilim the kippin, he can't be tayvel on the one that's still suspended mid-air, she'ein matbilim v'abri, he can't be tayvel mid-air. Okay, so we pretty much negated this attempted proof, because we thought we had a case of a Mishnah where there was no kavanah involved. Apparently you don't need kavanah for tefillah. Who says? Maybe there was kavanah. The Mishnah is just highlighting that we allow it despite our misgivings. So back to the question. Ella CHULLIN teloi boy kavanah miyaminala. End of the day, how do we know that kavanah is not a requirement in terms of being toivel for CHULLIN? This none. Here comes the Mishnah. So a sack of bananas dropped into the stream. Upasha, and he quickly runs to salvage his fruit. Upashat, who stretches out his hands? Mishiyod of Tmeis, a fellow whose hands became tummy. Now we're talking about a limited type of tumah. It's not a tumah midaraisa. Certain type of situations where a person's hands are tummy, only his hands, which requires a tefillah of just the hands. So he quickly ran over to the bananas, stuck his hands into the water. V'natlan pulled out his bananas. So what happens? Yod of Tahiris. Circumstantially, even though there was no intent to purify his hands, but by circumstance, they've been in the water, they become tar. However, the fruit are not susceptible to tumah, which means to say, typically, if water is placed upon fruits, they get wet, they are now considered rinsed and ready for tumah. If tumah touches them, they become affected by that tumah. But in this case, it's not so, because the water in the stream was never really designated for personal use, and therefore it doesn't have the ability to affect, the hechsher on the fruit. Because after all, he wasn't trying to do anything with the water, he was just trying to get his bananas out. But before we continue, nevertheless we see, despite his lack of intention, his hands became tar because circumstantially they were in the water. So we see from here that for tevilah of CHULLIN we don't need kavanah. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Let's just continue the Mishnah. However, if his intent was to rinse his hands and purify them in the water, what happens now? Yod of Torah, so certainly his hand become tar, his hands are tar. However, now once he made use of that water, it's considered like he designated the water for personal use. So now the fruit in there, by coming into contact with this water, are now susceptible to tumah. Okay, at the end of the day we see tevilah regarding CHULLIN can work even without kavanah, as per this fellow who's only plan was to get the bananas out in the first scenario, and still his hands become Torah. That's a right to Rav that tefillah without kavanah works for chulin. Eisvei Rava, I have a question, Rav Nachman, you're telling me tefillah without kavanah works? Tava l'chulin, v'uchsak l'chulin. Mishnah says, if he immersed for the sake of purifying himself for chulin purposes, v'uchsak l'chulin. And in fact, his mind was on it. Rashi says, Neskavein b'shas tefillah l'kach, that was his intention, that was his mindset. So it was mind and body involvement. He's okay for chulin, but asr l'maser, he can't partake in maser. Why? Because for maser, you got to have a higher level tefillah. You have to have mindfulness for maser. It's all about, what you had in mind. Okay, now let's make it the huchsak in. The Mishnah seems to say that even regarding chulin, you need to be huchsak. You need kavanah. You need mindfulness. Lo yichsak lo, but without that huchsak, it doesn't work. The Mishnah just means like this. Of course, for chulin per se, you don't need kavanah. The Mishnah is trying to highlight something. Even though he had kavanah for chulin, don't you think that kavanah works for everything? It's still asr l'maser, because you have to have specific kavanah for maser to get clearance for maser. But again, regarding chulin, perhaps kavanah is not required. Eisvei comes another kasha on this opinion. Taval lo yuchsak lo taval. So he went to the mikvah without kavanah. It's as though he never immersed. My level, let's assume what it means is kilu lo taval klal. It's as though he didn't immerse at all. Even regarding chulin, it's considered tamei. No, kilu lo taval maser. It means it's as though it never happened regarding maser. Aval taval chulin, but regarding chulin, it's okay. Now, who's Savar? He thought that he was just sort of shoving him away with this answer. It's not really the literal meaning of the halacha. The chuye just pushing him away. But really, Nafak, he went out, he investigated further, and he discovered a brisa in line with this opinion. The Sani, we have a brisa. Taval l'huchsak, he immersed without kavana. Mutar l'chulin, he can have chulin, but not maser. So that supports this approach. Okay, so far we have several rayas to Rav that regarding chulin matters, one can achieve purity by simply immersing in a mikveh even without intent, cognizance, plan, or purpose. Amalei Abayla Rabbi Yosef, Avakashi says. Remember, there was an opposing shita, Rabbi Yechna, who says that even for chulin matters, tefillah involves the mind. Leima tahavit yufta Rabbi Yechna miha, perhaps this brisa, which teaches that tefillah without kavanah does work for chulin, is going to be a refutation of Rabbi Yechona's opinion. Amalei says, yeah, you're right, but actually, it's a long-standing dispute. It's a machlekes tanaim as well, and Rabbi Yechonon will adopt the opposing view. Amalei Rabbi Yechonon, who the Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef, he's following the other Tana, the Sanya. Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef Aimer. So we shift to the halacha ben nega. A garment has a white blotch, or nega. The Kohen instructs them to immerse it in a mikveh first, and then lock it up for 7 days, and then after 7 days the nega is gone, you immerse it again, and then it completes the purification process. It's completely tahar. So Pasuk says, after 7 days, v'chubas shenis. Rinse it again, you immerse it again in a mikveh, right? Second time. Now the word second, the number seems to be superfluous. We know it's the second time. It said you immerse it once, and now it's again. Why shenis? In any case, the pasuk includes v'kubas shenis v'tahar, and that purifies it. Matamim shenis, says the Gemara. What's the point of adding the number 2? It's obvious. It's meant to connect the second time to the first time. Makish tachboises shenia. The pasuk here is correlating, connecting the second rinse, the second immersion in the mikveh, the tachboises rishona to the first one. Just like over there it says the kohen will instruct them to do it. Ma tachboises rishona, just like the first experience was ladas, with mindfulness, with purpose, the kohen instruct them to do that. Av tachboises shni ladas, likewise, the second one must be with das. In order to achieve purity, tefillah needs to have das. Well, says the Gemara, if you're going to connect it, perhaps connect it all the way. But really, the pasuk says, "V'kubas shenis v'tahar." It's meant to connect the second rinse, the second immersion in the mikveh, the tachboises rishona to the first one. Just like over there it says the kohen will instruct them to do it. Ma tachboises shni ladas, likewise, the second one must be with das. In order to achieve purity, tefillah needs to have das. Well, says the Gemara, if you're going to connect it, perhaps connect it all the way. only by way of the Kohen's instruction, right? So perhaps just like the first time around, Ba'inon das Kohen. You need the Kohen around. Avkan, Ba'inon das Kohen, perhaps here as well. The Kohen must instruct him to do. Talmud Bavli, Pasuk concludes with the word V'tayr, which says, in any case, Mekal Malkim, either way it works. In any case, here we have the Shita, Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef, who insists on Kavana, mindfulness, awareness, cognizance, to accompany a Tvila. Hence, Rabbi Yochanan's source for his opinion. Maskefala Rav Simi bar Ashi, I have a question. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, a Tvila must have Kavana. Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi, is that so? That according to Rabbi Yochanan, it is so. V'Amar Rabbi Yochanan, didn't Rabbi Yochanan himself tell us Halacha Kista Mishnah, we're typically meant to follow an anonymous Mishnah. So the Halacha adopts the opinion of an unnamed Mishnah. And now we have a Mishnah in our Sugya, in our page, in our Daf, and Amud Aleph. So now we circle back to the Mishnah by us, relating to a similar topic, mindfulness, regarding Shechita. And the Gemara connects the two. The Yar Sameach explains there are similarities between the two things. They're both trying to transform something. Shechita transforms an animal which is usher into something which is permissible. And likewise, Tvila is a transformative process, transforming something which is tamei into something which is tar. We assume they're pretty much on a similar track. And what does the Mishnah say regarding the kavana element by shechita? It's not required. It's not. The Mishnah says, "Naflo sakin v'shachta." The sakin fell off the table at the shechita. Even though it happened properly, meaning it was a proper shechita, psula doesn't work because why? The question was asked. Time of the nafla, it appears the issue is because the knife just tripped off the table on its own. There was no human involvement. He pilahu. However, if he himself tripped it off the table, so there was human involvement. Kshera. It's a proper shechita, even though there was no mindfulness. He had no kavana for this shechita. And we had said on that, right? Who's the one that does not require kavana by shechita? Rav explained that's Rabbi Nasani. So if by shechita, the consensus is we do not need kavana, so why would Rabbi Yochanan insist on kavana by tefillah? Right? Because that's the halacha. Rabbi Nasani. Says the Gemara, no. There's a big difference between shechita, where the pasuk indicates to us that other than the shechita of karbanis, which needs kavana, otherwise shechita CHULLIN does not need kavana. Shechita with matters of shechita, afilu Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef, moidi. Even Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef, who tells us that by the nega, by the garment, tefillah needs kavana, by shechita he agrees it doesn't need. By way of inference, midigali rachmana, since the Torah reveals to us, misasak bekadishim, when one is engaged in shechting a korban, and he's misasak, preoccupied, he's not being mindful of what he's doing, it is possible, because kachim needs mindfulness, needs kavana, michlal. What does that tell us about a regular shechita, of a mundane animal? Michlal de CHULLIN does not need loiboyin and kavana. Okay, so again, regarding shechita, it depends. So let's sort of divide it into 4 levels, 4 categories. The most basic, level 1, is without human involvement. The knife just fell off the table. All agree it doesn't work. Why? The Mishnah brings the pasuk. What you do, you can eat. It has to be by way of human involvement. That's level 1. Let's jump to the other extreme, other side of the spectrum, level 4, which is by karbanos. The pasuk says, has to be with kavanah, with mindfulness, with purpose and plan. That's level 4. What about level 2 and level 3? Level 2 would be, it was man-made, but without kavanah. Rabbi Nassan tells us that's okay. Only karbanos need kavanah, not CHULLIN. V'Rabbanan, says the Gemara. However, the Shittas Chachamim who disagree with Rabbi Nassan, they hold, look, we concede, of course, you don't need level 4 by CHULLIN, but it's true, you don't need kavanah for shechita. You don't have to have that focus that I'm doing shechita. That's only by karbanos. But l'chaticha b'inan, at least have in mind that you're cutting something. That's level 3. You don't need level 4. Focus on the act of shechita, but you have to know that you're cutting. At least be aware that you're cutting something. And that works by chulin, the chaticha ba'inan. Okay, so in conclusion, level 1 where the person was not involved at all agree it doesn't work. It's not a shechita. Level 4 where you knew exactly what you were doing. You were doing shechita. That works by karbanis. That's required by karbanis. But by chulin, Rabbi Nosson says level 2 is enough. Let it be a person doing it, but even without kavanah, it works. Rabbanan say level 3 is required. A person with a limited kavanah, knowing that he's cutting something, that's enough. Amar Rava says, Rava Baha, using this argument, Zakinu Rabbi Nosson over triumph, so to speak. He won them over, the Rabbana over the Rabbana, meaning based on the following argument, it would appear to me that Rabbi Nosson's position is correct. Look, how do you get to level 3? Where did that come from? Miksiv v'chatachta? And the pasuk describes, shechita by regular animal. Does it say v'chatachta cut? V'zavachta, it says you have to do shechita. So look, if you are requiring intent for cutting, so then you should go up to level 4 and require kavanah for shechita by chulin. If you're going to tell me you don't need kavanah on level 4 for a chulin because of that inference that only by kachim that's required, not by chulin, then who's to say that you need level 3? How do we get this new level? Look, either all the way up there or all the way down here. And Rava sided with this position. He says we don't really have a source for that sort of in-between stage. Hence, Reb Nosson's shita appeals to him better than Rabbana, and in fact, although by kachim you need level 4, but by chulin level 2 is enough. Human involvement without kavan. So all that is regarding shechita. Now let's shift over to tvila, which again is a similar concept where it involves a physical expression. And the question is, do we need mindfulness as well? Or is immersion in the water enough? Rab says immersion is enough without kavanah. Rabbi Yechon says kavanah is required, and we link that to a machlekes tanaim as well. So that's the Gemara. Okay, so we're speaking about a nida who was dropped into the water. How exactly? What were the circumstances behind this story? Echidami nida shenensa v'tavel. How exactly did this happen? The nida ended up in the water. We're speaking that her friend tripped her into the water, so she was dunked by her friend. There's kavanah there. Kavanah the chaverta, the intent of her friend, by extension applies to her victim as well. Kavanah ma'ali, it's a perfect kavanah. She threw her in. So the perpetrator's kavanah is applied to the victim, and the act of immersion was done with kavanah. So there's no question. Furthermore, with truma, it was done with mindfulness, like we said before. With the kli, she arranged it. She threw her in. This not as we have a mishnah that this allows you even to eat truma, which requires the higher level of purification with mindfulness. It's not a chareshes, vashoit, vasoma, nirvadaita, deaf mute, deranged woman, blind, shishvadaita, mentally unstable. If they have, an escort, somebody who's looking after them, who is cognizant, who is rational, they can fix them up, arrange for them to eat truma. So we see that the kavanah of their escort can accomplish that. So what's the issue with the nida here? Omar Papa. Apparently we're speaking about a different type of scenario. she was not pushed in by somebody else, because in that case, it is considered with kavanah. Although not the kavanah of the victim, the kavanah of the perpetrator. That would be enough. Rather, we're speaking that she herself somehow ended in the water on her own. Now, interestingly, the Gemara will now link back to the halach of shchita, to the definition of kavanah by shchita. So let's go back for a second to shchita. Reb Nosson says shchita has to be done by a person without kavanah at all, even though he has no clue that he's even cutting anything. He just threw something off the table. That's enough. So likewise, by tvila, which, as we said, is a corresponding type of system, what defines a tvila without kavanah? She tripped into the water. There was no kavanah at all, even to get wet. Amar Papa Reb Nosson, shenafla ben hagesher. According to Reb Nosson's definition of lack of kavanah, here we're speaking that she fell off the bridge into the water unknowingly, unplanned. And still, according to Rav, it's okay because Tvila doesn't need kavanah, even a minimal level of kavanah. However, according to the Rabbanan, that by shchita, they require level 3, right? They need some sort of minimal mindfulness, kavanah, at least that he knows that he's cutting something. So correspondingly, by the tefillah, you need some sort of minimal degree of kavanah to be even considered as an act of tefillah. You don't need a grand, comprehensive kavanah, perfect mindfulness, but you need some sort of minimal intent. What happened was she went down to cool off, she went down to take a swim. So there was kavanah for this sort of interaction, for the physical aspect of the interaction, even though there was no mindfulness in terms of the end result of her interaction, which is purification by way of tefillah. So the Gemara is assuming that just as Reb Nosson and Rabbanan have differing definitions regarding shchita shlei b'kavanah, likewise by tefillah shlei b'kavanah, according to Reb Nosson, even a basic tefillah without kavanah at all would work. Likewise, according to Rabbanan, although it's not a perfect mindfulness, that's not required by shchita, nor is it required by tefillah, but you need some basic mindfulness that she knows she's interacting with the water. Just as the fellow knew that he was cutting something, although he didn't realize it was a shchita. In any case, according to Rav, whichever definition you go with, tefillah shlei b'kavanah works, whereas according to Rabbi Yochanan, even for CHULLIN, kavanah is required as per the shita of Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef. Okay, so in a nutshell, shchita needs kavanah. Well, we sort of broke it down to 4 levels. Level 1 is the knife just fell off the table. There's no human involvement. It doesn't work. You need human involvement. On the other hand, by karbanes, you need perfect mindfulness. L'shem shchita of the carbon. What about chulin? Level 2 is Reb Nosson, who says, as long as it was done by a person, even without kavanah for chaticha, according to Rabbanan. Level 3 is required kavanah chaticha. Regarding tefillah, Rab says tefillah shlei b'kavanah works regarding, and Rabbi Yochanan holds you need tefillah b'kavanah. This corresponds to machlekes tanaim as well. Now all agree that by truma, maser, kavanah is required. There you have to involve the mind as well. But by chulin, Rab says you don't, even without kavanah whatsoever. Now what is considered without kavanah whatsoever? We have 2 definitions based on the corresponding shita is by shchita. Okay, all the best to you and atzlacha.